Twilight Gets a Puppy. By TDR. Chapter 53. Brindle Gossip. Part 3. Golden Oaks Library. It took another 10 minutes of screaming, carrying on, and putting out fires started by Dragon Light, before the trio was ready to face the massive problem outside. It took another 5 minutes after that before any of them figured out how to even open the front door with their new limbs. When Spike finally figured out how to open the door with his paws, Twilight took one look who was at the door and dove behind the couch. Big Mac sauntered through the door, not seeming to notice the Twilight-turned dragon. The massive face of Apple Bloom peered in behind him with a worried expression on her face. Spike sat in the doorway looking up at the massive form of Apple Bloom laying on the ground outside the library. "Spike?" Apple Bloom asked in a surprisingly quiet whisper as she looked down at the dog. "Yep," Spike stated. "You're a dog." "Yep, and you're a 5-story giant." "She also darn well ate 6 apple trees this morning for breakfast." "Not just the apples, 6 whole trees," a tiny voice yelled. "I'm a growing filly," Apple Bloom protested. "Well, you better stop before it becomes 10 trees. Spike snarked. "Where the heck is Twilight? I told her it was a curse." Big Mac's mane yelled. "There's no such thing as curses." The couch yelled back. "Bull honky, look at Spike and Apple Bloom, also you're a couch." Big Mac's hair yelled again. "I'm behind the couch." Twilight fussed. "That's a neat trick with the talking hair piece, Mac. You need to teach me that one," Ross stated, finally drawing attention to himself as he mulled over the burnt remains of his coat laid out on the coffee table. "Who are you?" Big Mac asked curiously with a slight hint of worry in his voice. "That's Ross." Twilight Couch yelled. "That's Ross? Woof." Big Mac's mane said again incredulously. "What does the Sweet Apple Acres annual yield have to do with anything?" Ross asked curiously, as he looked up at the barking hair piece. "Also, why does your hair sound like Applejack?" Big Mac rolled his eyes and nodded suddenly, sending a small orange figure tumbling out of his mane onto the couch, bouncing a few times on the cushions before it managed to get its hooves under it to yell up at Big Mac. "Be careful!" Applejack yelled. Ross blinked, leaning over the table to look at the tiny Applejack as Twilight clambered up to peer over the back of the couch at the tiny mare as well. "Seriously, how is any of this not a CU? Great horny toads!" Applejack yelped, leaping back and falling off the couch after she looked up and saw Dragon Twilight staring down at her. Looking at her. "Can y'all fix this?" Big Mac asked, looking over Ross curiously, then turning his attention to Dragon Twilight with an appraising eye. "Yes, no, maybe. I don't even know what this is, but I'm definitely going to do something," Twilight admitted, sulking back behind the couch now that Mac was looking at her. "All right. I 'spect ya can deal with it. I got work to do to cover for these two being indisposed. I'll check back later," Big Mac stated simply as he turned, heading out the door and back towards the farm. "Why the heck are you a dragon?" Apple Teeny shouted. "Why the heck are you a doll?" Ross questioned. "You stay out of this, you got off easy," Applejack shouted up at Ross. "Says you, do you have any idea how messed up my nose is? I can't smell crap. My face is all weird too, and flat teeth. What the buck am I supposed to eat in?" Ross paused as he considered something. "Wait one moment. I am just going to head into the kitchen now for no particular reason." The former Moondog grinned wide and darted to his hooves. He barely managed to keep them under him as he madly dashed into the kitchen. "What is he doing?" Applejack asked before both Twilight and Spike cried out in horror, coming to the same realization. "My donuts," the pair shouted and scrambled after the newly made pony as he raided the pantry. "No, bad RIHS, put that back," Twilight shouted. "Forget that. Wouldn't you rather have a nice tasty rock?" Ross chuckled as the sounds of a scuffle started. "That's my chocolate curler," Spike growled. "Chocolate's bad for dogs, remember?" Ow! No biting, those are the rules. Ross yelped. That never stopped you. Spike snapped back. No, not my cinnamon powdered grape jelly filled, screamed Twilight. Do you know how hard those are to get in Ponyville? Of course not, I can't taste most of this stuff, so why order it? Hey, get down, you're getting it all over yourself. Ross snapped as another crash sounded. There was the sound of someone sneezing and a whoosh of what sounded like flame as the doorway to the kitchen lit up. For a moment there was no sound except the crackle of something burning before the trio screamed again. The donuts. This is gonna be a long day. Applejack sighed. Asterisk. One fire, no donuts, and 15 minutes later, the trio was back in the living room going through a number of books with Twilight. The little dragon was still trying to fight off the occasional sneeze from the powdered sugar she inhaled. Applebloom and Spike were chatting just outside the door, and the rest of the town clearly decided to give the massive pony and the screaming library a wide berth today. Nothing. Seriously, I've been through every medical journal that I can find and there's nothing about sudden species transformation or size changing. Twilight fussed. Maybe in an older tome of magic. You know, one of those spells. Couldn't you just fix Applebloom and Applejack? Ross asked, as he looked up from where he was reading a book on the table before him. He was letting tiny Applejack turn the pages for him as he hadn't gotten used to the hooves yet. I would if I was still a unicorn. But those are advanced spells and I'm currently a dragon and I don't even know how dragons use magic or if they even do. Twilight sighed, picking up another book to open. What else could go wrong? Incoming! Applebloom shouted, as a window exploded inward and a blue blur crashed into the piled books, sending them flying everywhere, knocking Twilight over with a scream. A scream that let out another blast of fire that incinerated the book Twilight was trying to read, called Supernaturals. My book, whined Twilight as Rainbow Dash poked her head up out of the pile. My bad, Spike, my wings. Wait, you're not Spike. Rainbow Dash observed. I'm over here. Spike waved a paw from the doorway before leaning over to Applebloom to mutter in her ear. Rainbow Crash. This sent both of them into a fit of giggles which shook the tree as the massive filly tried to hide it. That's Twilight. Ross pointed out, lifting his foreleg off the table where he had blocked any of the flying books from hitting Applejack. What? Rainbow Dash looked at the flailing dragon trying to put out the burning book, then back up at Ross. Dash tilted her head a little, looking the former moon dog over before letting out a small whistle. Woof! Ra blinked and perked his ears up at her bark. What does the Wonderbolts roster from 996 have to do with anything? Never mind that, Twilight won't admit that Zecora cursed us. Applejack shouted from the table, getting Rainbow Dash's attention. Is that Applejack? Rainbow Dash asked as she stood up, letting the books fall off her back, showing that both her wings were facing the wrong way on her back. Apple Teeny. Applebloom offered, getting a scowl from her sister and a chuckle from Rainbow Dash. Nice, I guess that makes you Appleboom. Rainbow Dash asked. What about the others? Yep. Applebloom admitted. Not sure yet. Aside from Rainbow Crash, it's hard figuring out Ross and Twilight. Spike added. With all the fire, Twilight Sparkle is the best we came up with. And Spike's already a dog's name. Applebloom whispered. Yeah, rub that in, why don't you? Spike grumbled. It's not a curse. Twilight shouted far too late into the conversation. You know, sis, you could be wrong for once. I'm kinda proof you don't know everything. Ross reasoned. It can't be magic because it affected me as well. There has to be a reason for that, because even fictional curses are magic. Twilight shouted. THHHHHPPPPPPPHHHTTTPHHHMMBBBT. Pinkie Pie stated, staring down at Twilight, even though she hadn't been there a moment before. Her tongue was swollen, jutting out of her mouth and covered in blue spots. Gah! Twilight shrieked, nearly setting Pinkie's mane on fire. I thought she fireproofed this place. Applejack asked Ross. She did, but the bookcases are what's enchanted, not the books themselves. Spike called out. If the book had been on the shelf it would have been fine. My coat was never enchanted and neither were the donuts or her new sheets. Ross pouted about his coat. Nor was Pinky's hair, mind you, but that seems fine. Dude, so this is what you sound like? Rainbow Dash asked, trotting over to Ross as Pinkie Pie went through a whole conversation, leaving Twilight with saliva dripping from her scales. The Pegasus mare took a moment to look over the navy-furred pony before nodding sagely to herself. Yeah, I'd hit that. Rainbow Dash! Applejack shouted from the table. What, he's a solid 8 with his looks, adding in that voice and he gets another full point easy. I mean, come on, he looks like a buffer version of that flank show pony on all those trashy romance novels. Rainbow Dash stated. You can't tell me you wouldn't smash. I am highly uncomfortable with this conversation. Ross stated, turning red around his face, the blush traveling up his ears. Look, he even does cute, easy 10 now. Rainbow Dash pointed out. Day-ash. Applejack growled, a bit red herself. Apple Bloom is right there, if she picks up anything from this. What? She's a farm girl, you've bred chickens and pigs for years, she can't be that oblivious. Dash countered. Woof, a deep baritone cut through the conversation, causing everyone to go silent. The group looked over and noticed Fluttershy standing near Ross, her eyes were open wide as she stared at the former moondog. I can't say I've ever had butterscotch or cinnamon pie. Not sure I want to try snails either. Ross responded to the bark. What happened to your voice? Fluttershy whimpered, muttering to herself as she slowly sank down behind the couch, turning as red as Big Mac. See, even Fluttershy agrees, total babe. Rainbow Dash stated. Stop objectifying my brother. Twilight shouted. Daff feets raffs. Pinkie Pie slobbered. Woo-oomph. Ross's eyes shot open wide at Pinkie Pie's mangled bark before he dove back over the couch to hide with Fluttershy. Do I even wanna know what she said? Applejack sighed. She quoted at the Mountains of Madness, in Zalgo speak. Ross whimpered. Ross, that shouldn't even be possible, wait, weird tongue, speaking moondog and Pinkie Pie. Never mind, Pinkie, please don't bark ever again. Twilight stated. Off-key doofkey loafkey. Pinkie Pie slobbered chipperly. This is the worst thing ever. And Rarity's here now. Rainbow Dash sighed, dropping her head to the table with a thud. 10 Bits says she's got a problem with her mane. Applejack smirked. Sucker bet. Dash waved off. No takers. The mare in question shambled into the room wearing a massive cloak that covered her from head to tail. She seemed larger than usual, though nothing could be seen of her. The curse. I'm hideous. Rarity wailed. How is that different from normal? Ross snarked, getting a chuckle from Dash and Applejack and a slap to the back of the head from Twilight. They can all understand you now, idiot. Twilight growled. Oh. Right. Ross muttered, rubbing the back of his head with his hoof. Rarity had turned to yell at him only to notice the tall, dark and handsome stallion standing behind the couch with a dragon slightly larger than Spike standing on the couch glaring at him. Question? Is that a gender-switched Twilight? Rarity asked sweetly. Nope, that's Ross. Rainbow Dash stated. Woof. Rarity summarized. Oh yeah. Dash cackled. Ross blinked at the bark, his ears perking up. What did she say? Twilight sighed. Woof. Ross answered. What? Just woof. Twilight demanded. No, not woof, woof. You just tried to sell me a bridge in Manhattan. Ross explained. She just said woof. By Celestia's plot, no pony or anyone else bark anymore. Twilight flailed, falling off the couch with a thud. Ow. Okay, so I gotta know, What's wrong with ya? Applejack asked, looking up at Rarity. As I stated when I came in, I'm hideous. Rarity explained again without trying to sell it this time. Yoff hey daff, when if in a hair iff of face pinky pie Niagara falled. What? Rarity demanded. She said you say that even when a hair's out of place. Dash translated. Come on, my wings are backwards, Applebloom's a giant, Ross is a solid 10, and Chwee's a dragon, you might as well let us see what's wrong with you. Fine, but I will severely hurt you if you laugh, Rainbow Dash. Rarity scoffed as Applebloom and Spike peered in from the front door. Honestly, I'm hurting myself pretty well on my own with my wings backwards, but okay. Dash shrugged. Rarity growled before throwing, what was apparently one of her curtains, off herself in a dramatic fashion. She stood on her back legs, the limbs digitigrated, ending paws with sharp, if well manicured claws. Her pristine white fur covered her form as it had before, though her tail was no longer a curled well-maintained style, it was now a canine tail ending in a roughly diamond-shaped club. Her hips were covered in what looked like a robin egg blue skirt made for a pony that had been hastily adjusted to fit her new form. Her top was a sleeveless, backless shirt that was stretched tight over two rather large growths on her chest. Her arms were rather lithe, ending in fingers and claws similar to the ones on her rear paws. She wore a collar of glittering diamonds and her face was more vulpine than canine, giving her a sleek look. She had also applied makeup. Wah! Dash stammered. Shoulda figured she'd be a bitch. Applejack muttered. Whoa! Twilight stated. Cool. Spike and Applebloom called from the doorway. A daffment doff. Pinky splattered. Woof. Ross stated flatly, trying not to drool. Fluttershy peeked up over the back of the couch to look and softly gasped, though her gaze dropped again as she happened to notice something else behind the couch. Her eyes grew even wider as blood trickled from her nose. She let out a very deep-voiced eep as her eyes rolled back in her head and she collapsed. Ross blinked and looked down at the fainted Pegasus and noticed something himself. He let out a soft whine as he turned solid red. The former Moondog snatched up Rarity's curtain, pulling it about himself before he made a mad dash for the basement, nearly knocking the door from the hinges. Pants! Ross screamed as he crashed down the stairs. Fluttershy! Rainbow Dash gasped, leaping over the couch after her friend. Twilight glared up at Rarity, who pulled out a compact and was checking over her makeup. You did that on purpose, didn't you? Twilight demanded. Darling, I have no idea what you are talking about. Rarity smiled. Why would I, when suddenly finding myself as a member of another species, think firstly to try and tease a male who thus far has been immune to my charms? Dash was shaking Fluttershy, trying to wake her up. Shy, seriously, wake up, ya gotta tell me how big it was. Dash demanded before Twilight belted her with a pillow. Am I the only one concerned with this curse? Applejack fumed. Author's note. Warning. This chapter contains some of the aforementioned lewdness. Oh wait, I was supposed to put this at the front of the chapter. Oh well. Seriously though, this chapter was fun to write. Hope you enjoyed it. End author's note. End chapter 53. Brindle Gossip. Part 3.